Welcome back to the first annual Lakeland Finland Sustainable Destination Congress. I hope you had a nice break. You managed to get some lunch and recharge your batteries for another interesting session this afternoon. This Congress is organized by Visit Lahti and Lahti European Green Capital, and at the moment we are transmitting from a really beautiful city of Lahti, the European Green Capital. At the moment it's actually not green, but it's white. The winter is really lovely and beautiful here. If you like cross-country skiing, the conditions are perfect for you. Hope you are doing well wherever you are. Right, we've got another afternoon coming, and please keep sending us your questions and comments. We've been really enjoying them, and we've been managed to get some really nice dialogue going on. Let's keep that up. You can reach us at screen.io on the wall, or send us a tweet via hashtag SDC21. This afternoon we will be focusing on nature traveling, and especially sustainable nature travel. And we'll start this afternoon with Heikki Mäkinen. Welcome. You are from Lake Vesijärvi Foundation, your program director. I have to ask you first, what is your relationship to lakes? Your personal relationship?
Well, I'm a typical Finn. I've always had something to do with lakes. I like swimming. I have always swam from my early childhood, and we have summer cottage, of course, alongside one lakeshore, and well, lakes are also my work, so it's pretty big part of my life, actually.
All-encompassing, yeah. Today you'll be talking about how to transform an industrial area into a lakeland area. That sounds really interesting, and we're looking forward to your presentation. At the moment, when it's winter, what would you say, what is a kind of typical Finnish relationship to lakes during winter time?
Skiing or skating on the lake, it's great. Think about sunny March afternoon on the lake, always bright sky and sun shining and white snow, and just skating or skiing there. It's great. It's really great.
Sounds perfect. Well, it's good to have you with us, and without further ado, stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good eftermiddag, hyvää iltapäivää kaikille. Yes, last week was very snowy week in Finland. In southern Finland we got up to 50 cents of snow, which is pretty much here. And well, of course, I know that it's nothing compared to the amounts you can get, for example, in the Alpines, but here it's much. Of course, in the history, we have had periods during which much more snow and ice have existed in this part of the globe as well. Uh, 12,000 years ago, this place we are at the moment was covered by snow and ice, a lot of ice. The cover was more than 2 kilometers thick. Before you ask yourself, what on earth does glacial period do with my topic, Lakeland, how to develop industrial district to Lakeland district, I'll tell you a lot. The latest glacial period was extremely important. That period created geographical basis our living here lays on. Our geography, topography of Finland, location of lakes, location of rivers, and ridges, as well as clay fields. They are where they are because of so-called Weichsel glacial period, which ended around 10,000 years ago. Geography has had a huge importance in colonization history. Birth and location of different sources of livelihood, as well as in urban structure with roads, railways, and water connections. The city of Lahti wouldn't be here without Lake Vesijärvi and without rich Salpausselkä, which have enabled connections to different directions. Yeah, Finland is the land of waters. This map here shows you a proportion of water in different areas of the country. Water is an essential feature of landscapes in Finland. We have more than 187,000 lakes in Finland. More than 314 kilometers of shoreline. Almost 180,000 islands. By the way, this is more than 10 times more than in the world's largest island state, Indonesia. Of course, well, some of our islands are a bit smaller ones than Sumatra or Java or Borneo, but anyway. Because we Finns are so few, our freshwater reserves per capita are just huge. Lakeland, Finland. The southern Finland can be divided into two parts based on the location of lakes and rivers. Coastal areas are characterized by rivers and streams flowing side by side to the sea. But moving from the coastal zone to inlands, the scenery changes. There's no exact definition for Lakeland, but it can be divided, for example, like this. And if you are coming from the south, Lahti is the gate to Lakeland, Finland. This is where the Lakeland, Finland begins. Lake Vesijärvi is the 44th largest lake in Finland, with its surface area of around 109 square kilometers. All lakes larger than 100 square kilometers in Finland are considered as large lakes. This lake is very important for the people living in the Lahti region, giving many kinds of benefits and joy for them. But that hasn't always been the case. And that's also something which we can't take for granted. In fact, Lake Vesijärvi has needed a lot of management efforts, but at the same time, it's one of the most successful lake restoration sites in the whole world. So now I'm going to tell you a story of a lucky lake, Vesijärvi. Lake Vesijärvi have a history of 100 years of water pollution. Växjö Canal, marked with doesn't be here. Växjö Canal is in the northern part of the Lake Vesijärvi, and it was opened in 1871. It was an extremely important thing for the growth of settlements along the shoreline of Lake Vesijärvi, connecting the lake to the second largest lake in Finland, Lake Mäkinen, which is by which it was possible to travel hundreds of kilometers inland to the central Finland. During those times, Lahti was just a tiny little village, but the canal enabled early urbanization and industrialization of the area. Quite soon, Lahti became an important inland water harbor, and a big amount of lumber was shipped from central Finland to Lahti and onwards to St. Petersburg, a capital of an empire of Russia, to which Finland belonged that time, and to Helsinki and to other seaside harbors. It was possible because of the railroad, which was built in the late 1860s. In the early 20th century, passenger traffic from Lahti to north was quite active. About industrialization. Industrialization began in this part of the world in 1860s. The very first factories started in the late 60s and were boosted by the opening of Vaaxo Canal, like said in 1871. Much more raw material was now available and in a much easier way. Thanks to timber resources, Lahti developed as a city of carpenters and stayed like that almost or perhaps even more than 100 years until 1980s. There had been people near the Vesijärvi since prehistoric times. The lake was rich in fish and provided an important part of daily food. Industrial awakening from 1870s required labor, and Lahti began to grow, hand in hand with the industry. Lahti got a township in 1878 and became as an independent city in 1905. Population grew fast and sewage systems were not able to fulfill the requirements of enlarging industry of the city. Wastewaters were discharged to the lake as very poorly treated, if treated at all. The idea of dumping waste to the lake was like, well, not in your eyes, not in your mind. First signals of unwanted effects existed already in early 1940s. Sewage load was discharged close to swimming place, which had to be closed because of the poor quality of water. What did all this do to the lake? From decade to decade, water quality of Lake Vesijärvi got worse and worse. And in the 1970s, it was quite clear that Lake Vesijärvi was the most polluted lake in the whole Finland. The former crystal clear lake was turned into a sewage water pool. In the 60s and 70s, Lake Vesijärvi looked like this. The whole lake was, in practice, out of use for recreation or for any other purposes. Blue-green algae bloomings existed every single summer and lasted weeks after weeks. If you took a boat to the lake for some reason or another in the morning, rowed to an island and wanted to come back in the afternoon, you were able to take the same kind of lane in the algae blooming. The blue-green algae bloomings were tens of cents thick, and if there was a longer dry weather period, it became hard. It was like a French onion soup, hard cover on it and something boiling under the cover. Total mess. Well, French onion soup is not any kind of mess. It's delicious, but lake was. Finnish administration and politicians understood in the early 70s that something has to be done for water protection in the country. Efficient treatment of industrial and municipal wastewaters started in 70s. In Lahti, a modern treatment plant was built in 75, and sewage loading from the city to Lake Vesijärvi ended in April 1976. It helped, but was not enough, like seen in these next photos. Lake Vesijärvi was in so bad condition that other water protection measures and more actions were needed. The research community found out that one of the main reasons for these still existing cyanobacteria problems, blue-green algae bloomings, was amount of small fish in the lake. That's why they suggested wide biomanipulation activities. It meant mass removal of small fish. But why? How can fishing help the water quality? It's about food web. Some of you may remember from your school times the term food change or food web. In a lake it means that there is in the bottom there is algae or plankton, and plankton is eaten by zooplankton. Zooplankton is eaten by small fish, and they are eaten by bigger predatory fish. If the amount of little fish is too big, they will eat phytoplankton, they will eat zooplankton away, which means that algae can grow without any threat, and that causes water quality problems. Biomanipulation is still one of our main weapons against algae bloomings. Nowadays we fish around 150,000 kilos of small fish out of the lake annually. European-wide legislation and cooperation has given us some new measures for water protection, but these measures always need a local implementation and local interpretation. Looking backwards, summer 2006 meant a big change in protection of Lake Vesijärvi. Biomanipulation and decreased nutrient flows to the lake made 1990s as a quite good period in the history of water quality of the lake. Unfortunately, in the beginning of the millennium, project-based water protection activities suffered for lack of money and some activities had to be diminished. That caused negative implications, and in summer 2006, quite heavy and long-lasting algae bloomings took place again after many much better years. The city officials, together with the neighboring municipalities and local enterprises, decided that something really has to be done, and something has to be done together. As a result, they decided to establish Lake Vesijärvi Foundation in 2007 in order to secure funding to improve environmental awareness and to promote efforts to improve water quality of Lake Vesijärvi. Lake Vesijärvi Foundation was founded by the City of Lahti, municipalities of Hollola and Asikkala, Society of Industrial Enterprises in Lahti, as well as press company Esan Kirjepaino and welding company Kemppi. This founding of Lake Vesijärvi Foundation meant change from governing principles from governing principles to governance. What does it mean in practice? Well, governance has many meanings, but the one we are interested in here is so-called societal governance. When governing refers to constituted policies of state actors backed by formal authority to use monopolized coercive powers, governance suggests rather activities backed by shared goals set by a wide range of public and private actors. Achieving goals set requires common efforts and continuous interaction between different actors, because there is no actor who could dominate the whole field of water management. As a result of this approach, we have got new players to the field, and with them much more resources for water protection we have ever before had. These new players have been, for example, private enterprises, Lions clubs and Rotary clubs, hunters organizations, musicians, artists, local media, so on. And they all have brought us some new added value. Private enterprises and companies, which our main partners are mentioned here together with the logos of Vesijärvi municipalities, have given us funding, but not only funding, but also new kind of networks inside the business society in Lahti. Musicians and artists have sold their works and skills and given profits to Lake Vesijärvi Foundation. And many publicly well-known people have participated in our fundraising activities and so on. By doing so, they have enabled our management activities. By the way, this fundraising campaign we had some years ago with a quite famous Finnish rap artist Brady, tango singer Heidi Pakarinen, and one of our best ever cross-country skier Aino-Kaisa Saarinen, was the first time ever we got national interest to our work here. I wonder why. but these management activities we have implemented here. Lake Vesijärvi management plan includes different kind of activities. Like said before, communication is vital. Lake restoration measures, of course, research activities. We want really to know what we are doing, and with the research community we do also have quite large monitoring activities in order to maintain kind of adaptive management in our work. Based on these governance practices, we have set objectives of Lake Vesijärvi work from two different directions. We have combined legal-based goal to reach so-called good status of water based on European Union Water Framework Directive to set of goals rising from grassroots level, such like water is clean and clear, there will be no extensive algae bloomings, there will be large population of fish for recreational fishing, and beaches will be good for swimming, etc., etc. Here you have some photos of various management activities. Artificial aeration, well, management fishing, biomanipulation, making wetlands, dredging, and then, well, monitoring. And by doing these things, we have achieved a lot. Where are we now? This is the one and only graph I have in my presentation. And well, it's partly in Finnish, sorry for that. I'll explain this very briefly. In the left, you can see a brown and black pillar. The upper end of the pillar is the bottom of Lake Vesijärvi. The researchers have kind of drilled a 2.5 meters sediment sample. Based on different kind of information, they can slate different layers in the sample so that they can say, for example, in the depth of a meter on the bottom, we find layers which are 150 years old, for example. And by concentrating on that layer, they can find out what kind of conditions existed in the lake at that time. In the very right side, you can see this green, yellow, and red column. And it tells us about the relation between Lake Vesijärvi and the surrounding society. Until 1870s, the lake was more or less untouchable. Then from 1870 to the Second World War, or after to the end of the Second World War, it was period of industrialization. After that, 30 years of urbanization in the area, the growth of the city. And then from 75, more or less time of recreation. Okay, then let's take this column with letter P and forget this S and ZN. But the P means phosphorus. And phosphorus is the most important nutrient causing eutrophication and algae bloomings. If we go to the right in this column, it means that the content increases, and going to the left means that the content decreases. Until 1870s, the content of phosphorus stayed very stable. Then it rose and reached the top in mid-70s. And after that, thanks to water protection activities, we have seen that the content of phosphorus is decreasing. And where are we now? We have reached about the level we had here 100 years ago in 1920s. It's a very good result, but not the end of the story. We would like to reach the level of 1870s or 1880s. But this is just a graph, which can be, I understand if it's a bit difficult to understand, but and that's why it's perhaps better to have some photos showing the difference. Keep in your mind those algae blooming photos I showed to you and compare those to these ones. In the left photo, there's a machine we used for taking water samples, and in that picture or photo, it's full of Lake Vesijärvi water. Looks quite clear, actually crystal clear, doesn't it? Then let's have some more photos or a video. well, looks very different lake than some tens of years ago, doesn't it? I will end with a couple of lessons we have learned in our water management process. Firstly, water management really requires the effort of large number of various operators. Local sense of environmental responsibility is needed. It can be raised and it has to be taken care of. Long-term targets which will be achieved step by step are very important in order to keep the spirit up. So step by step. It's crucial to find right people in right places, of course. And finally, we have found that organizations like Lake Vesijärvi Foundation can really be a way to organize the manifestation and actualization of collective environmental responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heikki, for a really interesting presentation. As you just mentioned about few really important lessons that you've learned from this Lake Vesijärvi case. I'm just thinking, we've got audience members in Iceland, Norway, Sweden, in different parts of, and along different ecosystems as well. So can I pick your brains a bit about kind of like these principles that are required for an industrial or a polluted site to be turned into like a naturally rich and beautiful area? I would assume that alongside hard work, it needs a lot of politics and negotiation between different parties.
That's correct, yes. Yes, water management is, well, it's a collection of different abilities and different activities, different kind of knowledge and so on, and different networks. Networking is really important in this. You need these facts by researchers. You need funding from different sources, and you need really political will to do something for these water management problems.
Yeah, like you said, you managed to gather a lot of people from influencers to like politicians to research to, and most of all people whose heart is in it to protect the Lakeland and transform that into a naturally rich and vital and viable area. How do you see the future for Lake Vesijärvi now?
I see it bright, of course, and we are going to the right direction, and it takes time. With the history of 100 years of water pollution, nothing happens in a very short time. We need time, but all the indicators are going to the right direction. And this change from eutrophied lake to oligotrophic, or at least to a lake which is in a better condition. This is not kind of linear progress. Sometimes it goes easier, and sometimes it's more difficult.
Thank you very much, Heikki Mäkinen, and good luck with the important work you do for Lake Vesijärvi, and all the best. Thanks for popping around.
Thank you.